Yeah, so it's something that's a bit difficult for some of us who are older to understand. But kids will live their entire world on the screens, right? The more and more hours they spend, the more and more likely this is to be a problem. So something I noticed about screen-based worlds, right? For children can be better than reality. Can be more interesting, more exciting, more affirming, right? Especially if you are a slightly socially awkward child, right? You don't fit in the real world, you don't fit in, you go to school or with friends, you don't quite feel happy, comfortable. It's common to try and retreat back into these screen-based worlds. And I think it's also very important to note just the amount of hours spent. If the child spends more hours on the phone in front of the screen, or whether it's a phone or computer or TV, more than not in front of the screen, it's something to be wary of. As I mentioned before, sometimes nowadays parents use screens as babysitters. It's understandable, everyone's very busy and things like that, but it has long-term effects that sometimes we're not so cognizant of. So the thing I also noticed about screen-based worlds is that they tend to offer a lot of validation and affirmation. So in this internet world, there's a lot of kind of communities, subcultures, right? And the kind of things, this kind of culture, right? The things that we discuss, the things that we talk about, the value system, can be very, very different and very, very strange. Something that's not familiar to us, and not really the way that we want our kids to grow up. So there's something very, but it does give them a sense of validation and affirmation, right? Whatever they are feeling inside, whatever troubles they are feeling, they say, you're absolutely right for feeling this way. And the reason you're feeling this way is ABC. And the ABC that they give us is a bit not the kind of things that most of us want our kids growing up and living. This is what happens in screen-based worlds. And this thing also, I think, in some of the recent cases becomes an issue. Right? They keep telling you whatever you're feeling, you're not the one who's wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. The world is the one that is going crazy, right? You are perfect, you are good, you're fine. The world is all terrible. Right? So this is can lead to very dangerous line of thinking, right? And then there are extreme ways of going from feeling like a loser to feeling like a winner. Again, if you're in life, you're not good in school, you're not good in sports, you don't have the kind of things that make you feel good about yourself, you feel like you're a little bit small. There's a lot of ways these online people they find ways to make you think of yourself as successful. Okay? So just briefly, there's a lot of debate going on now. Some people say, we should ban smartphones for everyone under 16 and things like that. I don't have any very informed comment on this. I'm not really sure what is the best route. Maybe I'm just going to some comment. I do know, however, that my view is that generally it's quite difficult to ban things. And then people tend to find ways to make if a child has a need that is not met, they'll find a way to meet it. They cannot control where they are all the time, there are different strategies to this, and maybe some of the rest can talk a little bit more about it. Okay, I just wanted to briefly also go into some of the things that come up in the news recently, recent cases. There were two things that came up, right? One is a show, anime, manga called Death Note. The other one was involved in mass shooters in US high schools. I am not an expert on these things, but I did a little bit of research. I thought maybe we could just use this as a brief example of what we're going to see. So there were quotes in this from this movie that we used. Apparently this is about a high school student who finds a book one day, and if you write someone's name in the book, that person will die. So this kid went out and said, I'm going to cleanse the world of all the morally evil people, and he suddenly become like this godlike, powerful creature who's deciding life and death, right? Who's wrong and who's right. So it just gives us a little bit of insight into the mind of maybe the kids like this idea of that gives them that kind of power, right? And whereas in real life, you feel a little bit powerless, you feel a little small. This idea of being something supernatural, something big, becomes kind of attractive. Just very briefly, I studied in America, so I followed these cases a little bit, and it's very sad. One good thing about Malaysia is that luckily we don't have a lot of guns. There are a lot of guns that become a whole other thing, right? But something I sort of noticed or reflected on is that once these things started happening, in America, apparently now the biggest cause of death for children is gun violence. It's not cancer, it's not disease. When I first read that, I didn't believe it. I thought there's no way it's true, but it's really true. right? I worry that once these things started happening, right? Once you read about this mass shooting in the news, that mass shooting in the news, it kind of enters the public consciousness. And people start thinking like, oh, this is something that can happen. And this is what was most worrying to me about the recent case as well. I think a lot of us are worried. Like, once kids start thinking, oh, this thing can happen, this thing is a real thing, right? It's very scary and dangerous. So we might be entering a pivot point. Again, this is semi-related to gun violence, right? In Australia, there was one mass shooting in the Port Arthur massacre. And after that, the Australian government just said, we're going to ban all the guns, we're going to buy back all the guns, and there's been a drastic reduction, and we don't have that kind of problem, right? So then it went down one path. Whereas in America, they didn't do these things, and these things become more and more frequent. So I'm just wondering whether Malaysia will at an important point, right? Whether this becomes the first of many cases, or like the US model, or more like the Australian model, where you take all these steps and become less and less cases. So just briefly, I think of this as the battle for our children's emotional real estate. Kids have all kinds of emotions, they go through all kinds of things, right? And either they find a way to deal with it with us in the real world, or they find a way to deal with it in the screen-based world. So whether which way they go, then I think it comes down to us. Somebody wanted me to share this quote a little bit, so think about ways to do that. I'll just say it very quickly. Parenting is 2% what you say and 98% what you do. How you carry yourself, how you react, how you balance your selfhood against the pressures of reality. This is what a child watches and learns from. Just a brief quote that I thought was useful to think about. Kids do as we do and not as we say. And just very briefly towards the end, I think the risk that we're looking at is, children feeling isolated, alienated, getting to screen-based realities and further radicalization, normalization of mass violence in the public consciousness. So when we look at risk mitigation, I think it basically comes down to what our children are feeling and how we manage, how we teach them how to react to those feelings. So I think in terms of risk mitigation, these are the kinds of things that maybe we should be thinking about, how to make them feel from disconnected, connected, from isolated to supported, from lonely to comforted, from angry to calm, from frustrated to understood. Maybe I'll just briefly end with Star Wars. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. We want to reduce the suffering, we try to reduce the hate. Reduce the hate, try to reduce the anger. Reduce the anger, try to reduce the fear and disconnectedness. Okay, I think I will stop there for now. Sorry, it's a bit of a strange moderator-speaker combination. And we'll go on to the next video. At the end, of course, I'll have a dialogue, conversation. Alright? Okay. Thank you so much. So our next speaker is Akram Yusof, an old friend. He's a community activist. A few of us are in this whole WhatsApp group of CSO, civil society people. And in the aftermath of the case, Akram was sharing a little bit about his own childhood and his own experiences with these kind of things. And so I thought it was very moving and very pertinent. And so just pass it to him. Thank you so much. Let's go.
Hi everyone, you can hear me well? Yes. So first of all, let me start by introducing myself. My name is Akram. I'm currently working in corporate. I'm also a leader in a community, youth community, as well as here and there I'm a youth activist in a sense, for certain issues that I feel very strongly towards. And this particular issue really resonated with me for a few reasons. One is that I think all of you might have heard or seen the series known as Adolescence. Right? When I first saw it, I was deeply struck. Right? It struck a chord in me. Because when I watched that series, I really felt like I was that person as well. Right? And the same thing happened when I saw this incident. As a young person, I look back into my younger days, that could have easily been me. And why I say so is because yes, there are words like incel, weird, etc. But back in our day, we called them nerds, we called them geeks, and we called the other people, the cool people, the jocks. Right? So the terms may have changed, but the feeling of being isolated, or being segregated from others, or viewed as different and weird is still there. Those emotions never change. Why did it get, maybe some of us feel, say worse nowadays? Perhaps it's because of certain influences as well that has been amplifying those feelings and emotions. When I was younger, right, my parents were divorced. My mom was someone who felt that one way to teach a child is through discipline, right? And when I go to school as well, I was kind of annoying, a person who likes to ask a lot of questions. And so as kids who do not know how to deal with the situation, they would just call me as weird, just annoying, and I would often be left alone, right? I didn't have that many friends. And growing up, as I go through primary school, as I go through high school, it's almost similar. I think in high school, then only I found people who had the same hobbies as me, or I was able to connect with them. And one of those ways was actually through the screen. Gaming. At the time PlayStation 1 just came out, I remember I had 3 months of my life just staying at home and playing PlayStation. Because that was how I could feel a bit more empowered, a bit of how my life can be under control, right? Under my control. Because I was quite a violent kid as well. I remember when I was younger, anyone who made fun of my mom, made fun of me, I would get into a fist fight with most people. There were even times when I got a skipping rope and tried to strangle people. Right? It's just that I didn't go to that, extent, but I could have. And at the time, I wasn't thinking about what the consequences were. I was just thinking about these are strong emotions that I had within me. And I need to let them out. I need to show to people that I'm not someone you just mess with. Right? Because I'm a small person and people can bully me and the world's unfair. I need to make my mark. And there's no other way that I could show that aside from physical violence. But I was lucky that I didn't have people to stop me. But also I had strong morality. Because I have to say that influences of film and TV at the time were probably much better than they are today. Right? Of course, shows that I watched was like Barney, Power Rangers, where good versus evil, you feel like you have to be a superhero. Right? But today's consumption of media is completely different. Even when I watch it as well, sometimes I appreciate them. But the themes that you have that can be quite, it takes a lot of thought. And if you don't have enough experiences, you can take it literally. And that's where it gets very dangerous. So I feel that what happens today is with social media, and maybe a lot of our kids also spending a lot of time on it. I'm not saying that it's something that's bad, it's already there even from the beginning. People find an outlet to go to try and connect. It's just a matter of how do we connect. Do we have the right morality and right values since young to be able to guide us as kids as well? Right? I consume all of this, but I think back then the amount of media is not like today. I watch TikTok, I watch Instagram, I do consume content from say people like Andrew Tate, like Jordan Peterson as well. Some of the things that they say sounds right. Some of it, because I'm an adult, I know what is misogynist and what is not. Right? And when you're a kid who feels isolated, and one of those, what incels mean is actually involuntary celibate. It means nobody wants to be with you. No girl ever wants to sleep with you. You will never get married. You will never have a connection in your life. And as a kid who's already isolated, being called that makes you feel even worse. You feel angry. Why does the world punish me just because I'm a bit different? Right? The world seems so unfair. And so I want to teach these people a lesson in a way. Because the social media out there also shows, that you've got to be strong, you've got to show that you're powerful, you've got to show that you're dominant. So this kind of messaging is what affects kids to make these kind of moves sometimes. And the thing is that there's all these sort of examples out there, but the good examples, they're hard to find. If I go on social media today and I look through, the examples of people showing kindness, examples of people who are doing good, they're very few. I can find very, very little of it. And even if you look at comments today on any very political, be it on news, you find road rage. You find people fighting or beating up another person. You find people having racist comments, right? I just posted up, for example, on Facebook about how I feel like it's weird that people are asking for capital punishment for a kid. Just think about it, right? And a lot of comments that I got back, I wish it happened to your kid. I'm not married, I don't have kids. But that was the first thing that netizens said to me. Right? The first thing they think about is that, What if it happens to your kid? I hope that your kid also gets something like that. Right? Then you know how it